Hello, my name is Ryan, and I will be talking about the information we had for week 3. And so, for week 3, then the overarching theme was about stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. So, I will be giving an overview of the readings and all about that topic, what we read about this week. And I'll be using an audio PowerPoint, so you'll hear my voice in the background in the following. As was mentioned before, the overarching topics for the week that we read are stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. So this came from the main textbook reading. It was chapter 5 in the Cosson textbook. And he gave a great overview of the discussion. And here we see the discussion was divided into 3 different sections. There was the nature of the problem being the three main themes, the stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. That's the problem in society. So there's the nature of that. There's the causes of the problem. What causes people to stereotype, to discriminate against certain groups, and how do we reduce these problems? How do we reduce stereotyping and discrimination in our society? Under the nature of the problem, Cosson gave a brief overview of current issues and definitions, some of the issues being racism and sexism, and a lot of different stuff. And so he defined all of this. So what is stereotyping? Stereotypes are beliefs or associations that link whole groups of people with certain traits or characteristics. And then prejudice. Prejudice consists of negative feelings about others because of their connection to a social group. Then the definition for discrimination specifically concerns negative behaviors directed against persons because of their membership in a particular group. Cosson notes that each one of these can function on their own, but they often influence and reinforce each other. As you can see, maybe it can be easy to confuse each one of them, but according to definitions, stereotypes have to do with beliefs or associations, and then prejudice have to do with feelings, and finally discrimination is focused on behaviors. And so for the other section, the subsection for causes of the problem, a lot of the other readings, like in the Chadi book and the 2 articles, they were talking about different topics on the causes of the problem, and that will be discussed within the main topics. One of the causes is the social identity theory. That is a theory that was created in order to explain in-group favoritism, which can result in causing stereotyping and discrimination. Another part that's a cause of the problem is social categorization. It's a major cause of these problems, and it's the process of people classifying others into groups concerning certain attributes. So now for the last section, for reducing the problem, social psychologists are finding all different ways to reduce these problems in society. Some of the main ways that we'll discuss is they're trying to let different in-groups interact with each other, and they're trying to educate people in order to change attitudes and behaviors that will result in unity. I think this was a very helpful discussion, as we see, if we check the news any day, it's always a big topic in society in our world today of racism, different. I think every day we're people bombard us with different stereotypes or prejudice. So I think it's a very important issue in the world today. Under this section of what causes the problem is one of the main topics, the social identity theory. So this theory was created to explain in-group favoritism, and it hypothesizes that people strive to enhance self-esteem, which has two components: a personal identity and various social identities that derive from the groups to which we belong. Thus, people may boost their self-esteem by viewing their in-groups more favorably than out-groups. So within that definition, some of the main points are the in-groups and the out-groups. That has to do exactly what it sounds like, really. The in-groups are those people who have similar ideas within a group, and the out-groups are the opposite. And then, so the theory has to do with self-esteem. It theorizes that the reason why we seek out these groups, why we want to be identified with groups, is so that our self-esteem will be enhanced. The article by Shepard proves this theory to be true. It was an interesting article that it showed that in groups within music preferences, they're related with self-esteem. And so while the self-esteem produced, it can have a positive benefit in life, it can also lead to negative effects. So that's why it's under the causes of the problems. Brewer defines the negative effects as intergroup accentuations, in-group favoritism, and social competition. In other words, social identities can manifest itself in unhealthy ways by people seeing, when people see that their culture or their language or their music preference are superior to other cultures and languages and other people's music. So that can create a self-esteem that can be unhealthy, and then you can look down on those other groups. Social categorization. It's another main cause, another major cause of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination in our society, in societies all over the world. Cosson defines it as the classification of persons into groups on the basis of common attributes. So in many situations, social categorization, it can be a normal thing to do, and it can be helpful when relating to others. In-groups and out-groups are two major categories that can be present in many various social categories. As discussed before, in-groups are groups which an individual feels a sense of membership, belonging, identity, while out-groups are those where individuals do not feel the same sense of membership, belonging, or identity. Another reading that we read, Crisp and Maitner, they provide discussion on various theories of social categorization, and they focus on the diversities and complexities across all cultures. They note that there has been growing studies on the phenomenon that people can both perceive and use multiple categorizations simultaneously in constructing their impressions of themselves and others. This leads us to the last main topic to discuss, and that is how do we reduce the problem? Social psychologists have been using different methods and using education in order to help reduce the problem. We will talk about the various ways that are listed here. So, intergroup contact is one of them, and it's the idea of trying to get the opposing groups or people to interact with each other so that the hostility will lessen and trust can be built. It's important to educate people on both sides so they can have self-control and avoid negative behaviors such as relative deprivation. Also, there is the method of using a jigsaw classroom. The jigsaw classroom is a cooperative teaching approach where the students cooperatively do the teaching versus having a single teacher. This approach has seen impressive results. These are the questions I came up with for us to discuss. The first one is, what social psychological solutions can be used to reduce workplace sexism in our country? Then for the second one, many people stereotype evangelical Christians in America as being judgmental and hateful. How can the church reverse such a stereotype? Or is it even possible to? To close, I'm going to read a quote from Cosson that emphasizes the importance of people realizing that they can learn from each other. So after reviewing different intergroup studies on reducing the problem, he writes that the quote is, "Studies like these show that a source for much positive change stems from what is at the very core of social psychology, the social nature of the human animal. Some of our baser instincts, such as intergroup competition that breeds intergroup biases, may always be present, but we also can learn from each other the thoughts, values, and goals that make us less vulnerable to perpetuating or being the targets of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination."